Welcome back to AM Northwest. Our next guest has led an inspiring life, escaping Nazi Germany as a child, growing up in Washington State, then forging a career as a woman in the Mad Men era of advertising. Here to share her story, we welcome the author of My American Dream, Barbara Sommer Feigin. Barbara, good to have you with us. Your life really is incredible. Let's start with your journey from Germany to Chehalis, Washington, of all places. That's kind of crazy. But let's start with that, because here, the cover of your book features a picture of you that was on the front page of the Seattle Times. So tell me more.
Well, this is sort of an interesting, fascinating story, actually. I didn't really know about my family's escape from Nazi Germany until, well, I knew that we escaped, but I didn't really know any details about it until just a few years ago, when my sister called me one day and said, you know, I found a journal that our father kept in the run-up to the escape and the escape itself. So she sent me this journal, and I read it, and I was just overwhelmed by everything my father talked about. He talked about the journey itself and the group. There were 82 of us refugees, including my Jewish father, my Lutheran mother, and me at age 2. We came with the clothes on our backs, what my parents could carry, including me, and they brought a tent because they had no idea what would become of them in the United States. It was very late. It was July of 1940, and there was no longer any way to get across the Atlantic Ocean. You know, my father was sort of bounced around like a pinball, going from one place to another frantically, trying to find passage for us. Finally got passage on a train that took us on a sort of horrifying, as I learned from the journal, terrifying 17-day trip from Berlin through Lithuania, through Russia, including Siberia, through China, Korea, and finally to Japan. And from Japan, we took a Japanese ship, the Hikawa Maru, to Seattle. And the picture that you showed earlier, this is the Hikawa Maru. The picture that you showed earlier is me sitting on the dock when we arrived in Seattle with the 2 suitcases that my parents were able to carry, and me.
Yeah.
So
the journey itself is just sound like almost too unbelievable. And at times, though, you weren't eating or drinking for days.
They had no food for several days, nothing to drink for several days, and the train was dirty. And you know, my parents, I learned so much about them in reading this journal that I had never known before, because they never spoke about all this. But they were so determined and had such perseverance. You know, they thought, we're going to get through this one way or another. They were terrified, though, because the train was stopped 14 times along the way during this 17-day trip. And each time they had to show their documentation, and they were terrified that they'd be taken off the train. And God knows what would happen to them at that point. You know, so it was quite an experience to learn about it.
You end up living in Chehalis, which is a pretty small town. Did you experience any this is your house in Chehalis. Did you experience any anti-Semitism? Because that was the time. And now, I mean, I say that now is the time, but.
Right. Well, first of all, our family was a very weird little family in Chehalis. There was no one like us. All of us spoke only German, no English. We had really very little in the way of clothes. I wore hand-me-downs from our neighbors that my mother used to have to sort of remodel in these very awkward-looking ways. So I was not aware of any anti-Semitism. And my father did speak in his journal about how kind the people in Chehalis were to us in terms of welcoming us to the town. You know, so I, of course, was very sheltered and naive, so who knows? But I was certainly not aware of anything.
You ended up going to college, going to Whitman College in Walla Walla. You got a degree that at the time that at the time was unusual for a woman. You went into advertising after that and became very successful during the time when you were maybe the only woman in meetings.
Often, the only woman in the room. Yes, when I graduated from Whitman, the options for women were to either be a nurse, be a teacher, be a typist, or get married. And none of those things really appealed to me at the time. And so I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I learned of a program that was being run by the Harvard Business School and Radcliffe Graduate School that was for women, because women were not being admitted directly to the Harvard Business School at that time. And I thought, well, I'm going to take a shot and see if I can get into this program. And I did. And I learned really then that I wanted to be in marketing. And to be in marketing, you kind of had to be in New York. And I didn't get into advertising right away. I worked for the Vic Chemical Company. That was my first job. And to really be successful and have a career path in marketing, you know, it's very well understood that you have to be in product management or brand management. And those kinds of jobs were absolutely not available to women. Yeah. So I had to kind of go around through the back door and get into marketing through market research. And that's what I did. I got a job at Vic, makers of Vicks Vapor Rub and Formula 44 and all those good brands that everybody knows and uses. And I was there for about a year and loving my job. And I thought, gee, it's about time for me to talk about career path development and compensation and so on. So,
Barbara, you know what? Here's the awful thing is that we have to wrap this up, and we just you know, skim the surface of your life. So I'm going to suggest to everyone that you check out her book, My American Dream, because it really is fascinating from start to finish, and then your kids and your success and all of that, and your perseverance and your hard work. Barbara, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Helen. It's been great to be with you.
Thank you so much. We'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.